When did I come to trouble? Exactly, that's what I'm bringing. You don't know anything. I don't need you going like this.
Like this?
Have the shit out there about this. I'm surprised you didn't know where you contract.
I did.
Wow.
You know how some people are, they become fans the day they win a championship, like, oh, it's my favorite team. Like,
You've been there
that wasn't your favorite team last year.
since the '80s.
Yeah.
She graduated.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You're like legit.
Yeah, I am legit. Yeah.
I was expecting a better game than that. Little 80 was the only one doing anything. The rest of the team wasn't doing nothing. I'm like, yeah, you're not gonna beat them playing like that.
I used to go every year. I used to go to the Big East tournament in Manhattan.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you did.
That would be that.
Yeah.
Get drunk on the train. Yeah, it's a dumb. Wow, they're doing this problem, it's working. No. Yeah. That's good.
Hello, how are you? Good.
Like, any coffee, water, or anything?
No, thank you, thank you.
Yeah. So we're in here. I don't know why the tables are like this. But. I know.
Hey, John. Where are you?
You want both open?
There.
Yeah.
Hi, Denise.
Oh,
You got that?
yeah.
I'm Jim.
Okay.
So it didn't feel like you're so popular right now.
There you go.
Definitely feel it. Yes, and I saw now they got two more that they did notice at time. Oh my. I haven't tried.
I mean, it'll warm. Enough. Like if I really want to kick, I'll go up to, I will. I've never. Kudos to you.
Say.
Why? There's something in you that needs that more.
I mean, the girls laugh at me.
Yeah.
Glasses clog up and shit, the whole sweat. Hey, Joey Barone. You burning the clock on? Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna have a meetup. Oh, really?
Huh? Around that.
Play a guy in March.
It's you like. Where's the sit? And hang out with you guys. Thank you very much. Yeah, should I be up front?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, that's the best part, right? Being right up front. I'm gonna, you guys want this table for yourself? She's here, she's, I think we'll be able to walk.
Hey, Arnold.
Yeah.
Did you do your secret handshake with Barone?
Can't even talk about that.
No. Okay, it's tomorrow.
How are you? You clearing a bocce court? What's going on?
Yeah, that's right.
Huh?
You want to-
Hey, how are you?
I mean, here's the big wall, heavy lifting.
Put it back a little bit.
I need to go get my brother. How are you? No.
Oh, yeah. This is my mom.
This is one of those meetings. First thing you did was clear a bocce.
I know, I didn't know. She's the manager. Oh, did you know she, you know, there- what? She worked, she like manages the office. But she doesn't really practice unless she can make her kids. Commissions for their own thing. Oh. It's great. Yeah.
I need that in my life.
Right.
Like that was-
What she.
Somebody said, "Dude, not the only one."
Stop in the-
I was even trying. I had to break it in here. The first
And then you went back to the club.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, I'll get us blockers.
Yeah. You're not gonna like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't need the round, I don't have that.
Yeah.
I can't be a fun guy. Hey, what guy? Oh, okay. All right, I'll get us.
Yeah. I have a team in my office. Wow. Otherwise, they were like, so.
How do we, why are we here? Oh, I didn't recognize.
Uh-huh.
He's got a lot of that like black hair on it. Like me.
It's officially white, it's not even gray.
Oh.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's how it's up. In there.
Yeah.
I think I got the email this morning.
No, I think they're required. Yeah, we're even sitting through.
I'm excited.
There's one of my flavors, right? Oh, this is all about constantly.
From one side.
Yes.
That's great, son. I'm still having, there's two brothers. Where's John? Not schmoozing, trying to get some business. Oh, yeah. Hopefully, here's, I can still freak him out that I call him. You would watch that, there's only two people that call him out at the bar. Yeah.
Two of the actors, and he's in there.
They can keep their places on.
And then he gets.
Right, the coolest shot of the bed.
That could be a picture.
Speak on you, yes.
They,
I'm well. You're welcome. But I go.
Sheriff broke her.
Love it, love it.
We'll probably get started. This is, Aaron and I have talked about this. This is probably the first time we've ever talked to a group of people with absolutely no understanding or knowledge about.
If you're expecting to leave here with all the answers, we do apologize.
I do want to let you know that evidently I found out today that Blair is going to be competing in a comedy show.
Yeah, that's me. If you don't know Blair Bishop, title sales.
And I told her.
Now.
Oh, yeah, when I become a star, I'll remember all of you. I'll sign your autograph.
Don't be joking, I told you.
No. Okay, a mushroom walks into a bar. And I don't remember your full joke.
He says, give me a beer.
He says, give me beer. He says, we don't serve mushrooms here. And then he goes, why not? I'm a fun guy. Okay, well, at least you guys are boosting my confidence.
Practice.
You heard Mick, pity laugh. So, and we're not joking about the fact that there are no answers because there's so many moving parts to what's going on right now. And we have so many different fingers in the pie and so many personalities that whatever we think we know today is going to change tomorrow. I read yesterday that the Department of Justice just prevailed on an appeal. And in 2020, I believe, they sued NAR. And the day that the lawsuit was filed, a settlement was filed on 2 points: more transparency on the MLS regarding commissions and a prohibition against buyers agents telling buyers that they worked for free. They didn't have to pay them. That was the settlement. It was a filed settlement. And in the settlement, there was language that the Department of Justice, as part of the settlement, was closing their investigation. Well, the year after that, we had a new a political party in office. And they basically withdrew from the settlement and asked the court to reinstate their investigation. NAR objected on the basis that it was a settlement and it was agreed to. And they said, we only settled on those 2 points. And there's other things we don't like the way you do business going forward. So we want to take another shot at you. And the Court of Appeals just came back, the District Court of Appeals, after 2 other appeals just came back yesterday, the day before, and said that the Department of Justice is right. They get to reopen their investigation into NAR and their practices and procedure. So they're not even done making up new rules or challenging the way we do business. So that's why I'm saying it's difficult to get a firm grasp on what's going on. What we do know is that we are now up to $684 million in settlements, but that does not include the $9 million settlement that was reached today or yesterday. By another brokerage, one of the brokerages that exceeded the $2 billion a year annual. Sold for 9.7. So now we're getting close to 700 million, which does not even equal the amount of legal fees that have been requested to date. So we have all this litigation, we have all these settlements, and what we don't have is approval by the court. All the different courts in this, of any of the settlements. And all the settlements are subject to court approval. They're all basically the same. You pay this and you agree not to do this going forward as far as business practices. And they're all consistent. But your Department of Justice has objected to settlements and asked the court to reject them all out of hand so they can get what they really want out of this. So, okay, take it away.
So I'm Aaron Barone. If you don't know me, everybody seems to know this guy, so. I'm just up here to get a water, to get thirsty, but. You know, I think when I just sit down and think about this, if I were in your shoes. You know, you have to redefine, you know, what people are saying out there about what realtors do. Everybody in this room knows. You know, all the hard work that you have to do, we know that. Unfortunately, that's what's being challenged. So, you know, driving into work today, I heard a commercial from a real estate company that says, real estate's gotten easier. We'll sell your house to 1%. And it went on, you've all heard it, you know what I'm talking about. But that's what you're up against, because now I feel like the general public is hearing about these lawsuits. They're hearing about the discount brokers. And so now you're gonna have to be ready to field questions of, you know, what is the commission? How are we gonna set this up? You know, every time I read an article, one says, you know, this is gonna blow over. It's business as usual. 2 years from now, you know, whenever this really goes into effect, nothing really is gonna change. It's just gonna change how we get there. I've heard one professional say that he's convinced that a buyer's agent will max out at $1,500 to $2,000 for representation. So very different opinions. And again, we don't have the answers because we don't know how this is going to play out. But really, we're just here to kind of tell you what we've heard, give you some advice as to how to handle your day-to-day business. Just coming from the attorneys that we've spoken to outside of ourselves. And really it's reselling what you do. Because that is what's being challenged in the public, unfortunately. So, you know, we'll touch on a few things. But again, that commercial that I heard today, I was just like, that's tough, right? Because you're now going against this public media that's putting out these new settlements. And then you've got companies that are going to say, well, the job's easier now. We'll just charge you 1%. And that's what you've got to overcome. And, you know, everybody in this room provides more professionalism than a 1% commission would come with. So it's just getting that out there that people are comfortable with that.
Yeah. I got 2 postcards at my house from a brokerage that's willing to sell any house for 2% max, citing the lawsuit saying, and you will not have to pay any buyer commissions. And then if you get on social media, the very worth of what we do in our industry is now being challenged by people that have no idea what we do. It's just that all they saw was it was easy 2 years ago, and houses move fast, and we still have a somewhat volatile market where if a decent property goes on the market, there's competition for it. So, as Aaron said, they think it's easy in that the commissions pay where unwarranted. That's not fact, that's perception, and that's what you deal with. So now that perception is reality. And I've talked about, I think you've gone online, basically NAR is telling all of you, and they're right, you have to reinvent yourself. You have to now become a salesperson. And you have to sell yourself. And NAR put out, I think, two articles for you to use that said, and I forget the numbers, but 170 ways, things I do for you. And then 89 more things I do for you. When I bring it up, people laugh because not all of it applies, but the point is, what we're finding out is we all got the lax because we either assumed that everybody knew what we were doing and what the process was, or we didn't care. The ones that didn't care are not going to be here next year. But you cannot assume that sellers and buyers know what you do, because now they're going to want to know. You know, if I'm going to pay you 5%, 6%, you better be able to convince me that you're going to earn that. Tell me how you're going to earn that. Buyers agents are going to have, you know, this whole thing was about buyers. All these lawsuits are about buyers. And who are the people that have been damaged the most by this? Buyers, no question. And now buyers agents are going to have to convince a buyer who already has closing costs, down payment, inspections, origination fees, appraisals, that, oh, by the way, you're gonna have to pay $10,000 to me to represent you. That's not gonna work. And I fully expect the next class action suit to be by somebody representing buyers, first-time home buyers, to say, you've just taken away my ability to buy a home. I can no longer afford a home because you're making me pay a commission. The system worked. And all these first-time home buyers were buying homes, now we can't. So how did you do us a service? And they didn't. And let me tell you, I've been marking this down. I had a realtor contact me and say, my best friend's grandson is buying a relative's house and I don't want to get involved. Can you help him with the contract? That was last Wednesday. Helping with the contract was he wanted it done by Wednesday night. Then he called me 4 or 5 times Thursday, 4 or 5 times Friday, called me on the weekend. I don't like that. I'm not in your business. You guys have to like that. I don't like that. Called me today, called me all week, but today he called to let me know he's talked to some of his friends and he wants to meet with me because he thinks I need to change some of the terms of the contract. So do you think a lawyer wants to represent buyers? That's what they're saying, they'll hire buyers attorneys. No, not unless he is absorbing. So what are buyers going to be stuck with? Dual agency, which is a legal fiction and it's worthless. And the worst part of it is, I think now with all the publicity that's out there, I don't think sellers are going to consent to dual agency. If you truly explain that as a dual agent, I provide no assistance to anybody. I just pass information back and forth. That's all I'm allowed to do. And you tell your seller, I'm not even allowed to tell you how to counter. Why would a seller agree to that? So we're going to have buyers, in my opinion, that are just not going to have representation. They've been told they can do it all on the internet. They can pick the houses they want to see, and oh, we'll pay you, buyer agent, $100 a house that you show us, and we'll pay you to do they talk about these cafeteria lists of what a buyer's agent may sell, or he may. Well, let's deal with that one first. How many of you want to chase a buyer when you're paying them $100 to show them 5 houses, and then they call up and want to see another 5 houses and another 5, and you don't have any money yet? You're going to do that? If you do it, you're not going to be making a living for very long, because the problem is buyers know when they start talking to people and they see it on the internet, and I've read it. Those agents, the brokers aren't going to sue you for that. Don't worry about it. Or the other one is, or they're going to offer as a buyer's agent, I'm willing to work for you for $50 an hour. Who out there wants to keep meticulous records to justify that $50 an hour fee you're going to bill, because the moment the buyer gets it, if it's not precise and detailed and makes sense, he's not gonna pay it, or he's gonna get somebody, or he's gonna file a complaint. So all these alternatives, we're just gonna have to wait and see how it floats out, but let me tell you a story. And you know, I'm not a political animal, but Aaron and I met with a political animal who provides our company services. He used to be a RESPA attorney in Washington, DC. He grew up in the real estate business. In fact, while we were talking to him, there was a notice that went out that his father's old real estate company just sold for $310 million. And his father, way back in the day, when he just got out of law school, had him research joint ventures, all these different marketing tools and other sources of revenue. So this guy knows what he's talking about. He's connected. And this is the story he told us. And as he told it to us, my eyes got bigger and bigger. He said, this is not at all about real estate. This is all about political influence. That a while ago, and I had this fairy tale that I thought was really cute. I was going to tell you about these two giants that were fighting. And now that I see how grim you all look out there, I don't think I'm going to go down. So supposedly, and I trust this guy, NAR and AARP got hooked up in a political battle. AARP is a heavily the Democratic organization supporting Democratic causes and Democratic candidates. NAR, as we all know, is more Republican and supports more Republican candidates. Years ago, AARP, as the best that I can surmise, pushed to have a national cap on commissions. 5 points. That was the most that the realtors could collect on a sale transaction. They pushed hard, they lobbied hard, and they NAR lobbied harder, spent more money, and that didn't sit well. His opinion is that when the Department of Justice changed from a Republican organization to a Democratic organization, the writing was on the wall when they withdrew their settlement and asked to be able to investigate NAR. His opinion is the battle then became, we are going to go after NAR and break them financially. And what does that do politically? That keeps them from dealing in the political arena as far as for Republican supporting Republican candidates, and also they wanted to prevent them from being able to deal with all the social media that they were putting out there about commissions and that. So NAR's lost. I mean, NAR even said the reason they settled is because they would have been bankrupt just to buy the bond, not to actually go through the appeal, buy the bond. So, you know, I'm listening to this, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and he isn't either, but he said these are facts. Said, you know, I'm a political animal. I live in that world. This is what this is all about. Whether it is or isn't, we're stuck with it now. We're stuck with that fight. And then I read what the DOJ did. We're waiting for these settlements to be approved. And the DOJ came out and objected and asked the judges to reject them out of hand. The statements that the DOJ has come out with, what you heard our president say, real estate commissions are junk fees. That's their philosophy. The Department of Justice filed a brief asking all the judges and all the settlements to reject the settlements, and said, we oppose the settlements because our intent is to decouple real estate commissions so that sellers pay their commissions, buyers pay their commissions, and they don't want any crossover. They said the critical issue is not how much a seller should offer a buyer's agent, but whether a seller should even set compensation at all. In the filing, the DOJ rejected the rule changes proposed in the settlements and they are actually asking, or going to ask for an injunction that would prohibit sellers from making commission offers of any kind to buyers brokers. They said they also suggested buyer brokers might begin offering hourly rates or flat fees rather than charging commissions. They said in some of these presenting sellers and listing agents with commissions for greater price competition. The buyers set the compensation for their own broker. Buyer brokers might choose to offer flat fees or hourly rates. That's what they want. And then the buyer broker, the efforts, now listen to this, this is your government. The efforts required by a buyer broker have a weak correlation, if any, to the ultimate sales price of a home. And most, if not all buyers, would likely prefer a fee structure that does not reward their buyer broker for helping them to pay more for their home. Now, they're supposed to be helping buyers in this. And so I just give you that as a background as to what's going on out there. So we're not done by any stretch now that they've won the appeal and can take more action against NAR. We're not done where we are right now.
Joe, have you heard anything more on that? I know it's fresh, right? 48 hours maybe. Their next stop is Supreme Court, right? If they want to challenge it beyond that?
If NAR wants to challenge it, but again, I don't know if NAR has the money.
Because it was a 2-1 ruling of the appellate.
Yeah, and the dissenting opinion by the judge was very basic. The settlement agreement said NAR closed it in consideration of the settlement, they closed their investigation. The two that allowed the appeal and affirmed their ability to go after NAR again said that closed didn't really mean closed. It only closed it as to those 2 points, all the other points. And I think one of the things they're going to go after, I read you that quote about injunctions. They don't want sellers and buyers and sellers agents and buyer. Heaven forbid that we're allowed to negotiate and contract and do business without interference. They want an absolute prohibition, prohibiting sellers from paying anything for buyers.
Doesn't that violate the sellers?
I think it violates everybody's rights.
Yeah.
We have an inherent right to contract. You know, there is a legal tort action called interference with the right to contract. How can they now tell all of you how to do business, which is what they're doing? So it'll be interesting to see how lawsuits are now going to, because these class action lawyers, $100 million, blood's in the water now. Let's see who we can line up next. And next is going to be buyers and the first time home buyers. Yes.
Hi, I don't mean to interrupt your flow, but this is just something that's kind of stuck in my brain, but from what I understand, when the lawsuit first originated, the judge sent down his ruling stating basically that NAR could not bring any kind of information that would really lobby for us and really truly show what we do and how that can be a negative toward, you know, buying and selling homes. If this gets to a Supreme Court level, can we bring information and sorry, my mind's just a blank right now for the words.
Per se, and
Yeah, first of all, thank you for saying that I have a flow going. I feel like an affidavit to that. The only thing I can add, and I'm not a litigation expert by any means, but all I can tell you is you had a jury that listened to 2 to 3 weeks of testimony, and it was in-depth, I mean, they have people from Australia, everybody in Europe testifying about their models. They listened to all that. NAR had their opportunity to present their evidence there as to the value that you all bring to the table and why the commission's structure best service sellers and buyers, which it is. It's a great model for that. What we've got now, it doesn't work at all. But that jury, how long do you think they deliberated after that trial and all those facts? What?
2 minutes.
Yeah, 2 hours, literally 2 hours, and they came back and gave the plaintiffs 100% of what they asked for, 1.8 billion. And guess what? Under antitrust laws, that's automatically tripled to $5.4 billion. So NAR had their crack at that level, and it's hard to appeal a jury verdict. They are the ones that make the decision on facts as applied to the law given them by the court. The only way you can appeal that is if you can show the court gave wrong jury instructions as far as what the applicable law is. I don't think anything's going to change this, especially because of the political climate. I think we all now are in the position that, you know, I hate to be glib, you survive and thrive, or you cry and die. You know, make your choice. I had a hard lesson years ago. I was sitting in a room.
There went your flow. huh?
Yeah. I was sitting in a room with my 2 partners, and there was a sea change in the way our business was being done. And in my instinct in the room was, you know, we can fight this. You know, we've got the business, we've got the ability, and we don't have to, you know, and they just shut me down and said, okay, there is a river out there. You can swim against the current and drown, or you can turn around and swim with the current and survive. That's our choice now. We can argue that the facts are bad, the decision was bad, the bad law was given, and this is not a fair result. We can argue that all we want, or we can start focusing on what we have to focus on is how are we going to do business based on these rules? And these rules that are the 2 stones in the settlement take effect mid-July. 1, no co-op on MLS, and 2, mandatory buyers. They're not buyer broker agreements anymore. They thought it sounded better if it was buyer representation agreement. And mandatory U.S. buyers agents cannot take a buyer into a house without having one.
But can you restate the last part, because I'm taking notes? So mandatory, the mandatory things are the buyers must have an agent to enter a house.
No. The buyer's agent must have a signed buyer representation agreement before they can take a buyer into a showing.
Thank you.
Do we have that form yet?
Not yet. I'm sure you're working on it. That was a question. Dale sent us a list of questions, and one of the questions was the forms. I don't know how it's going to happen. But my opinion is your franchisor is the one that's and is paying the money. And by law, they are the ones required to implement these new procedures that they agreed to. To me, implementation means they are going to prepare your forms because they are going to be responsible for business being done in accordance with the settlement. I talked to a RE/MAX agent in town, and he said he called his RE/MAX broker after I told him that, and they said, it's in litigation, we're not talking to our franchisees about what we're going to do or can't do. I don't know if that's changed now, but you guys heard anything from Keller?
Yeah, Keller Williams is taking the approach, you know, it's 50 states, 50 different rules that abide by that, and I think they're gonna lean on the regions to work with the brokerages, the franchisees within the state to make sure that we get the proper documentation and follow the spirit of the agreement of the
Right.
settlement. Yeah.
So I think you guys will get something from the motherships telling you for your region, this is what has to go in your listing agreement. Your listing agreement is gonna have to have a blank for the seller agreeing to pay X. There's gonna have to be disclosures about whether you're going to offer anything to the buyer's agents, and that'll go in your listing agreement. And then the buyers is even going to be more precise because they've got a lot to explain. And they have to be very clear in explaining that we're going to charge you X. And we are going to try to get some of that from the seller. But if we don't, you're gonna have to pay us. And the concern is, are they? Even if they agree to, will they?
So to continue down that path, we're all moving in a direction, Keller Williams International, the Ohio Valley region, us as a franchisee, are moving with July being the target date. However, there's a lot of conversation that these settlements won't even be approved by the courts by then. You know, what does that do to it? And what does that look like? And I don't know that anybody has an answer to it.
No, well, and look, until they tell us that these settlement agreements have been approved, they're not effective. So it's business as usual until somebody tells us otherwise. I agree, I tend to agree with you. They're saying mid-July, they couldn't even agree on a date, mid-July. And all this has to be done. And every judge in all these settlements has to approve it. And if we didn't have the DOJ in their ear, filing briefs and stating what they want, I think all the judges would have jumped on it. We got a settlement, the parties agreed, what do I care? It's off my docket. But now you got the DOJ saying things like, we're gonna file for injunctions to prevent sellers from paying anything to a buyer's agent. Are they serious? I don't know, but all these moving parts, it seems to me that when we get close to July, it's gonna be extended. Because maybe only 3 of the settlements have been approved, and every settlement, as you all know, basically has the same terms. The NAR settlement is basically the same as your settlement, the KW settlement, anywhere settlement, they're all the same. The point is, if they can't, if the judges are concerned about the power and influence of the Department of Justice, you know, many of these judges may be appointed, many of them are going to be running for election, looking for funds. And then some people are saying, why don't they just wait till after the election? Because maybe after the election, a lot of these things are going to change again. So, but I will caution you. We all want that delay. We all would love to be able to continue down the path we've been walking for these years. But if I were you, I would wait. Even if you never used it, whatever you do now to get ready for whatever way you decide to do business, it's only going to make you a better realtor, regardless of what the decisions are. You guys are going to have to reinvent yourself. You know, they asked a buyer, did your agent go over the contract with you before you negotiated? Never mentioned it to me. Did you know that these provisions were in the contract for CAUB? All these issues? No, don't even know what those are. So the point was, the more people on social media that are saying things like that, the bigger uphill battle you have to prove value. And the only way you're going to do it is to reinvent how you do business. And I'm not saying all of you don't do that, but it became easier. And, you know, buyer's agents, we see at the closing table all the time, people that have no idea what's going to happen once they step into that room. The first thing we always say, you want us to wait for your agent. And the things they say, you don't want to hear. That their agents didn't call them, they don't even know if their agents are going to be here. Did your agents review the closing statement? Would you like us to go through? No, we don't. So you have to reinvent, because now they're cognizant of the fact that if you don't do things the way you're supposed to, somebody's gonna complain to somebody. And they think, and that's what you're gonna get. You're gonna get why should I pay 5% on a $2 million house? What do you do different there than you do for a $200,000 house? You have to get ready for all this. And when I talked to another group, I said, what I think has become difficult, because we now have generations of people who aren't comfortable with this. They're comfortable looking at a screen. And I remember talking to younger agents who are no longer in the business, who basically said that your time's over. That's not the way to do business anymore. We can do this all on a computer. It's a waste of time to get into a car to do that. We can do that. Doesn't work, folks. You are in, it's sort of a crass statement, you're in a belly-to-belly business. If somebody's gonna give you money, they should look you in the eye. That's how you're gonna sell yourself. They're gonna look you in the eye and see if they trust what you're telling them. You don't do that on a computer screen or on a Zoom meeting or in a text or an email. So the comment I got back, well, Joe, it's easy for you to say that, but people won't meet with us. You better give them a reason. You know, you've got to make them want to do business with you. And if they're not meeting with you, it's because maybe you don't want to meet with them either. So you take no right away as an answer. So, and I'm sorry if I pontificate, because I don't have to do what you guys do every day. So this is going to be very hard. If I had to reinvent myself now to make a living, which I may have, because title's next.
Legal fee.
Legal fees are all minimal.
All this money they're talking about, who's getting it?
Well, it's not the plaintiffs in the lawsuits.
That's it.
They estimated with $800 million in settlements that the people may get up to $75 that actually file a claim. $75.
That's right.
The lawyers, court costs. The lawyers have already filed for 100 million, and they're not done yet, and they'll get it.
Was there just a matter of time before they could go up with plumbers or hairdressers or anybody else and say, you can only charge $10 for a haircut? You know, plumber getting $100 an hour is unfair. Yes. We are.
Aaron, is your question, so, I've been doing this now, longer than Brian, well, some of you are old, but so, open houses. It's one of the things that, I've tried to not follow much on the social media because it drives me crazy. But in regards to, open houses, so, if we hold an open house and you have 20 people come through, and they don't have their agent, and I know this has been thrown around there, what does the agent do since they don't have a signed exclusive? I don't know, I know that's not been answered, but I'm just throwing that out
Well, no, it's going to be the same as it always was. Your first question to anybody is, are you represented?
Okay.
Do you want representation? And you have to talk to your seller to see what kind of representation is available. Will your seller accept dual agency? If they won't accept dual agency, then your conversation's over with that buyer that's in there. But
Are you referring to the fact that he said that in order for like going forward, buyer's agents have to have like a signed loyalty agreement, he can go show a house? So you're saying if we're holding an open house, is anyone even able to come if they're not signed with buyer's agent?
Yeah, that was basically the question, and Joe's saying is that, your first question, are you represented, do you have an agent? And so if they're not working with an agent, then Joe was saying, it goes back to the listening question, when you're talking to your sellers, you have to find out if they're willing to do a dual agency.
And the distinction between the point you brought up, that the buyer's agent has to, it's mandatory that they have a buyer representation agreement before they can show them a house. They're not showing them the house. It's an open house. they're walking in by themselves. So the mandatory buyer's representation agreement is inapplicable because the buyer's agent's not gonna be in that house. But the question is, from the listing agent or whoever's sitting there for the listing agent or the seller, are you represented? That's always the first question.
Can I have a little bit of clarity on, you said the last 24, 48 hours. There was a ruling or something about, is that about the existing settlement that they had, everyone had agreed to?
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
What came out the last few days, they have more.
Does it affect the settlements that have been,
No,
how does it affect those?
No, the decision that just came out was the result of a prior lawsuit, not by plaintiffs, by the Department of Justice, attacking NAR and their practices and procedures. The day that lawsuit was filed, because NAR and Department of Justice had been working together for quite a while, they filed a settlement. The settlement dealt with just 2 points. It was transparency in the offer of cooperation and a prohibition from buyer's agents saying that their services are free. They're not free, the seller's paying for it, but it's free to the buyer.
Right.
So that settlement was filed. Those were the 2 points. The political climate changed. The Department of Justice wanted to withdraw the settlement because they wanted to further investigate NARA and other procedures. So they spent 1.5 years or 2 fighting in court. And the court ruled the last few days that that settlement agreement, even though it says this closes all the further investigation, only limited their investigation to those 2 points. And now they are allowing the Department of Justice to go after everything other than those 2 points, which is irrelevant. The first point makes no difference because the settlement now is taking care of how commissions are offered on the MLS.
So basically, the current settlements that the parties agreed to will effectively be.
But different settlements. That was a settlement with the Department of Justice.
Right.
These settlements are plaintiffs' class action lawsuits. And they're, every major brokerage settled. And like I said, I think the total settlements are 684,000. But those are totally different. That first settlement was just between the Department of Justice, who sued NAR.
So my question is, the settlements that the brokerages agreed to, will this new opening have an impact on the new settlement effectively?
Good, because what's going on now is nobody knows what the DOJ is targeting. What else is it they want to go after NAR for? Because it seemed like the settlements gave them what they wanted. No MLS, clear cooperation, no offers of commission on the MLS. And the buyer's brokerage or buyer representation agreements in writing. So everybody thought that should make the DOJ happy. They're not. If they were happy, why would they open up this old settlement so they can go after other parts of our practices and procedures? But they haven't told us what. I'll tell you one, I'm fairly certain. So if you've been reading this, all the literature says you cannot show or list cooperation with a buyer's broker on MLS. It refers to on MLS, everything. You can, on MLS, offer concessions. As long as those concessions are paid to the buyer, they can never be paid to the buyer's agent by the seller. What the buyer's agent or what the buyer does with the money is his business. So they allow advertisement concessions, and those are going to be as creative as you are, creative moving expenses, whatever it may be, closing costs everybody's talking about. So there'll be concessions that'll be right on the MLS. So everybody started looking at us, well, off MLS, they didn't prohibit. So a lot of brokerages are saying on our site, we will advertise just our listings, which they said in articles is fine. You can't put anybody else's listings on your site, but all your Keller Williams listings on your Keller Williams website can offer co-op fees. I don't think that the Department of Justice is gonna go with that. That circumvents the whole intent of what they're trying to accomplish. They want to prohibit any buyer brokerage fees being paid by the seller. So
Is it that when the rubber hits the road, it's all gonna boil down to appraisal? And how are they gonna appraise, let's say it goes into effect July 15th. Okay, and you sell a deal, there's really no comps under the new way. So are the appraisers gonna go, oh, that was a 3% buyer brokerage, they're gonna start dinging that off of the comps? Problem.
I don't know how that's.
What do you think about that?
You're all steps ahead.
Just going back to the commissions on sites, that seemed to be the recent articles in the last 2 days, is that they've caught wind that basically that's the workaround. And that regardless of what the settlement was, that everyone's trying to get creative. Well, if we can't use the MLS, what can we use? It was broker websites. So I think they caught wind of that. And which is why they seem to be reopening other settlements to get to these other points. To basically get outside just the MLS. You know, when we talked to the attorney, he mentioned, you know, what's gonna happen to the MLS, right? The MLS is what protected agents that brought buyers to get commissions guaranteed. Now you're not allowed to talk about commissions. So what is the MLS? Is it Zillow? Well, what we learned and what I looked at today is new pricing the commercials. Homes.com has invested billions of dollars buying up smaller companies and is projected to pass Zillow as the #1 home search engine in the United States. And the prediction is that most people will start using homes.com the next 2 years as a primary place to list properties. And what they do is they actually allow agents to put their name, the brokerage's name on it. It's not just like a private listing. But what's different with them is they get all their revenue from selling information, data. And
Our data. Our data.
Correct.
That we don't get paid for by them.
So they're not making money on commissions. So they're just bringing all the traffic in and, you know, so.
Those are Zillows.
Yeah, but realtor.com does, they've been doing it for years.
But they are gonna let people list for free. It's a free service to get you to use it. I was amazed that they spent $2.8 billion before you saw that first Super Bowl ad. 2.8.
I mean, I enjoyed it because I think they will overtake our MLS. I really do.
Well,
And
there
you
it
know
is.
what? They're so much smarter than the NAR. That they'll fight this stuff.
Well, I think the MLS is a dinosaur now.
Yeah.
Well, you have to understand where homes.com comes from. Who the company, you know, the parent company there is CoStar. And, you know, just ask any commercial agent that's paying $500 a month for belongs to them. Not $500 a year, everybody, $500 a month. And they're smart, they know what they're doing.
And the MLS, again, protected the commission structure that was in place. You had almost a guarantee as a member of the MLS, you're gonna get paid. If somebody advertises a listing on their brokerage and says, you know, we'll co-op 3%. There's no binding agreement on a website from a broker that says you're gonna get that. So it gets a lot more messy when you take it out of the MLS. It's completely structured to protect everyone's works, and now everyone's trying to, you know, find different ways to negotiate commissions, you know.
Well, they'll probably come up with an amendment to the listing stating.
Correct.
Buyer brokerage fee or whatever.
Well, one thing to remember, and before all this came up, it was a recurring issue. On MLS, if they say, you know, hot tub to stay, you know, whatever. That is not, we had so many people say, where's my hot tub? Well, the MLS is a solicitation for offers. It is not a contract. And they've offered to sell their house for X, generally speaking, you don't pay X. So everything they bought is just a solicitation for offers. And what Aaron is telling you, if you were going to go on, another broker's website and they say they're gonna pay you as a buyer broker 3% to, if you bring a buyer who closes, you better negotiate that in your contract. Say pursuant to such and such, seller agrees to pay. It's gotta be in writing, otherwise you have no protection.
You do. Broker members of the MLS agree to abide by that. So there is a contract that guarantees compensation. It's the reason MLS was created back in the early sixties, but
I'm talking about on a website.
yeah, no, on a website, there's no
No,
guarantee
that's
whatsoever.
what, yeah, MLS guaranteed payment. If they go to these off MLS offers, new rules. You better get it in writing.
Well, as a brokerage, probably, we should educate our agents to do it every time. I mean, there's no reason moving forward that you should.
Yeah, and they're gonna change the rules. First of all, when we talk about this, they say, well, we're not allowed to negotiate commissions in the contract. Well, that's an NAR, the code of ethics from NAR. Do they even apply anymore if you're not a member of NAR? So, you're going to have to, get used to the fact that if it's offered to you by another brokerage, the offer in and of itself doesn't guarantee payment like MLS did. You're gonna have to put it in your contract. Because now, all of this says commissions are negotiable between buyer, seller, and their agents. So before it was, you can't negotiate commission because that's between the two brokerages and the buyer and seller are not involved. Specifically, they are directly involved now. So.
I just walked out because I've got a client who's buying a house, or he's trying to buy a house, but he's gonna be selling his house. And he knows all about this. He was asking me, do I get any money? Because he bought a house 2 years ago. The house he's in now, I sold it to him 2 years ago. Does anybody know what's happening to the settlement? What's gonna happen with that money?
I'm
Oh,
just-
like,
Oh,
he's gonna get money.
He's not $75.
That's actually lawsuit.
Or he's not in Missouri.
Oh,
And
it's
the-
good money, yeah, he'll get maybe $75.
But if he was in Ohio, I thought that was Missouri that filed that. Or that class action lawsuit, is it for?
Yeah, oh, no, you're right, it's just in the, there's like 7 that were settled. But I think that they're going to make it applicable across the board. But obviously you have to be a plaintiff in part of that class action for where it was filed. And there's a website where you go to now, it tells you everything you have to do. You have to have your closing statement and submit all that, but the money is minimal. Don't get excited, you want to be able to buy you dinner.
Well, what I wanted to tell him was, how much did you pay when you bought the house? You didn't pay me anything. That's what it came from the seller. And now he's gonna sell his house. He's gonna say, he's not gonna get them back.
But that's the point we're making. This perception that's out there, everybody thinks, I don't have to pay you anything anymore. Now they feel that they're in a much stronger negotiating position. And the issue is, yeah, there's gonna be agents that say, we're gonna sell your house for 1%. Are they gonna be around in a year?
Nope.
So the point is, you cannot shy away from that ad. You have to hit it head on. You gotta say, for 1%, I don't think you're gonna provide me the service I provide, and it's not some generic, I'm a wonderful realtor, read my press clippings. This is what I'm gonna do. And you know what? You have to stay in touch with your clients. You have to nurture the relation throughout the transaction. They have to know that today you spent 2 hours on the phone arguing with the buyer's agent about some point they're trying to bring up at the last minute. They don't know you're doing that. So part of your value is your time. That's all we've got to sell to people is our time. And if you don't let them know what they think is, you get a listing agreement, you have 20 offers, you choose one, you get a contract, you give it to a title company, and then maybe you show up at the closing to get your check. I'm making it a lot worse than it sounds, but trust me. We see a lot of things.
Part of the perception right now is because of commissions being negotiable all of a sudden, which we know they've always been. I've had two situations where agents have been in contract, representing a buyer or seller, one of each. And after in contract, they tried to renegotiate the commission.
I think there'll be a lot of that. I think once they got you to the drinking trough,
So be prepared for those conversations.
Have it up front. Have that conversation up front, whether they bring it up or not. I'm with that.
so your buyer's agency agreements, representation agreements, I think are gonna have to be pretty heavy-handed about saying, you are agreeing that you're gonna pay me. I will try to offset, but if not, you will pay me the full amount or the difference. And you acknowledge that this is a binding contract between us. Now, even with that in there, a lot of your brokers are gonna say, we don't wanna get involved in a lawsuit over $5,000. And the buyers know that. So,
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of litigation. I think from that as time goes on, we've always had a difficult time enforcing buyer's representation agreements that we've used prior to now.
Just had a quick question about that point. If we write in a contract, some of us do residential and commercial, we've been writing commissions in commercial contracts since time began. If we write in the residential contract, to your point about a buyer's representation agreement, that the buyer agrees to pay the buyer's broker or buyer representing agent, wouldn't that make it contractual and all parties would be disclosed in that fact?
yeah, but that's always been contractual. The issue is one of practicality versus legality. You have a legally enforceable contract, but you're not going to sue and enforce
What
it.
I'm saying is if we write it in the purchase contract, we have the buyer representation agreement. And then we write a contract with them on a house. And then we write the buyer's agent, the buyer shall pay the buyer's brokerage, however the wording would be constructed, whatever the agreement was. Wouldn't that make it binding in the actual purchase contract?
Well, it's binding. Again, the question is enforceability.
But how about?
On the settlement statement?
Yeah, the title company
If it's
would
in
be
the
open
purchase
up
contract.
for not,
Yeah.
for not paying out the buyer brokerage
I think
agreed to.
that helps us,
Yeah, can you do both sides, please?
because then we know what's been negotiated, otherwise, we're always asking.
I mean, I think that makes it have more teeth as far as being enforceable.
Yeah.
Interesting, it just dawned on me, never, don't ask for listing. But
Yeah. Well, and yeah, as a title company, we're obligated as a fiduciary to close in accordance with the contract. Practically speaking, if a buyer says, I'm not signing any papers that shows a commission payable, we're not gonna close. We're gonna end up holding it in escrow and people are gonna have to fight over it. I mean,
That's better to do it before.
I
closing.
agree with you. It's a binding contract, put it actually in the contract, and we as a title company will automatically show it on the closing statement.
Right.
When we send it to the buyer and they call and say, we're not gonna sign that, we're not gonna close.
We can still have a problem, but we're putting a second
Yeah, but-
layer, we're putting a second layer, we have a buyer representation agreement. And we write it in the purchase
Yeah.
contract, exactly the terms. Maybe in some scenarios, the seller would pay some and the buyer would pay some. However, that's constructed, put it in the body of the contract, everybody signs it. The buyer would sign it for a second time on the purchase contract, but wouldn't that make it more?
Practically, I'm giving you worst case scenario, the buyer calls us and says, I'm not signing.
Right.
But practically speaking, is the buyer gonna walk away from the house?
Nope.
Probably not, so put it in the contract and hopefully that smooths it out.
Wonder what a lender would think about that. Bingo.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got lenders in the room. What are your thoughts?
Well, I was just thinking, I'm absorbing everything from these realtor meetings and what you guys are saying. Well, first of all, with the buyer's agreement, I think on the lenders, we're gonna need to see that up front, right? Because let's say, $300,000 house and they're paying 3%, $9,000. So we're gonna have to disclose that on the initial loan estimate, that commission fee, first of all. And secondly, it could possibly disqualify a buyer from their ability to purchase a home. And I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, it could be case by case with the house because, yeah, like it may need to change per property specific. So it's gonna be something that, we're gonna, I imagine, be monitoring from start.
And how does this help the buyer? Who is, it doesn't.
The consumer always loses.
Here's the gentleman that Aaron and I met with. These are just some of his bullet points he told us about. He told us about Biden calling the commission's junk fees. He said, yes, it's supposed to be effective in mid-July. He said, that's the immediate impact. He said, but we're gonna have chaos for 8 months to a year where everybody's trying to figure it out. And then we'll get some guidance after that. So he thinks it's gonna be the Wild West for at least a year. And then we'll know the true impact. He said, buyer's agents, new and part-time agents are either going to disappear or they're gonna be flat fee people. He said hourly, he thinks that's a farce. He said that the record keeping, the arguments about you overcharged me, you only spent 10 minutes there, not an hour. He thinks it's unworkable. The cafeteria list of services. He thinks they'll agree to, they'll want this and then they're gonna want more along the way and not pay. Buyer commissions, there's talk about them being rolled into the mortgage. I'll let the lender speak to this, but he said 8 times, never, 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 never. They are not gonna let buyers finance these commissions. Joe, you agree, disagree? Just say you agree with me.
Yeah.
Keep the flow.
I kind of agree.
But he was kind of.
Yeah, I mean, just a couple points, going back to the beginning, like I've been doing this 30 years and it wasn't until we would get the settlement statement from you guys that I ever knew what an agent was being paid, right? So that's a big change, and to Joe's point, the pre-approval now is not a blanket pre-approval, like it's gonna be more work for everybody. Like you guys are gonna have to be communicating with your lender partners. I'm going to see this house this afternoon. They're gonna pay X percentage. Can we qualify? What's the maximum we can? Because obviously your buyer agent compensation is there. The lending world, I'm not gonna say that they would never allow that, right? Right now, FHFA has come out and said, and it's funny because you guys, the lawsuits are kind of about what was typical and customary in your market. They're saying that paying a seller paying a buyer's agent's commission is not part of the interested party contribution limit, as long as it's normal and customary for your local market, right? So that's their stance now. VA, on the other hand, you guys know veterans can't pay an agent a penny. They're just taking the, well, we're waiting to see how everything works out. Here's the problem that would come into play if you would try to incorporate your commission into the loan amount. Mortgages are sold as securities. Securities are based on risk. So if you have a 5% down mortgage, that's going to be at a higher rate than a 25% down mortgage, because there's less risk in case of default. We take that 5% down now, right? 95% loan to value. And we say, okay, we're going to roll in Kate's 3%. That's now 98% loan to value. Could a mortgage-backed security be created that allows for that? Sure. But the consumer is going to get screwed again, because guess what? It's going to be at a higher rate, which reduces their buying power in a period where home affordability is one of the things that we're all talking about. So, the group, and I've spoke about this with several of you before, the groups that are most impacted are going to be people buying currently homes under 500,000. That's where the majority of your first-time home buyers are, which 40 to 50% over the next 2 year NAR is predicted will be first home buyers, because they're bootstrapping their way into this, right? You get over that $500,000 price point, normally you have a buyer that's a little bit more financially secure, probably sold a home, sitting in equity, those type of things. So the problem is, and like you said about chaos for 6 to 8 months,
we're going to be reacting to everything that happens. And what I've seen over my 30 years is the mortgage industry is not quick to change, right? So there could be people proposing ideas, but they have to go through government, which is kind of causing us all the damn problems in the first place. So, so that's kind of where I am. I mean, I think ideally, regardless of which party gets into office, they're going to have to placate a little bit to first-time homebuyers. Like, that's gonna be a giant part of the voter pool too. But giving them a $10,000 credit to buy a house doesn't solve shit.
Now, here, another thought too is, okay, so I have a seller. And I know that I can't, let's say that they say sellers cannot provide buyer's agents any compensation. Let's say that they go that route. Not advertising, but not provided. I'm a seller, I'm going to say, well, I'm going to give my buyer 3% closing costs. I'm advertising that up front. I give it to the buyer has that closing table toward their deal, so the buyer has the 3% they would have brought for closing costs to pay their agent. I mean, I foresee a lot, am I simplifying things too much?
Worst commission.
What was that?
Worst commission.
Or what's the appraiser, that's where it's gonna come down, is the appraisers are gonna start, they're gonna, I think, end around that, cause it's easy. You just say, seller to sell to pay buyers 3% closing costs, and then now your buyers have 3% to pay the buyer brokerage fee. That's simple.
Exactly.
But
That's
the
what-
appraisers, I think, are gonna screw that up. And I don't blame them, because
They've got that now.
The price is gonna be 3% less.
Maybe.
So, I know,
How do you know?
it's gonna be the market value.
Wow, there's a concept, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's what knows that people that are driving this. Really don't have a clue, because all the articles say sellers will now reduce the sale price by the amount of commission they're saving. Do you think there's any seller anywhere that's gonna do that? Never. So this is not reduced costs to the buyer 1 penny.
And I do
It's just the opposite.
that the appraisers are gonna need to know. I mean, if a seller can pay a buyer compensation, just not be advertised, if that's the way they go, the appraiser's gonna know, does this include that or not? Before they can do their appraisal.
Which they already do. It's in the contract. Sure. Yeah, they already do with How do they get into it?
Something else that was brought to my attention this week too, in showing time, it's always been there. Where when you're scheduling a showing, it's like, who are you? Are you an agent? Are you an appraiser? Are you an inspector? Whatever. Now there's some way that some agents are making that a required field, so you can't, what used to be, you could just go past it and schedule your showing. Some are making that a required field. Is buyer represented? This is a buyer's agent. So just something that if you see that, I've heard that recently. So you can just kind of give me a heads up. Since you're all in the room.
I don't think somewhere in the it's got to be a measure.
You edit instructions.
Instructions. Yeah, you can get it always.
I mean, none of us know how exactly it's gonna go. But there's gotta be a correction. There's gotta be some way that this works for buyers, because otherwise they're losing at every stop here. And at some point, I know houses, are far and few between, the inventory is low. It's $300,000 house, the pool of buyers is gonna be cut in half if they have to pay the commission. So the seller might, if you have that listing, might say, we're not giving any concessions, this house should go right away. Well, they're gonna lose. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people are gonna buy it because it's a house and they found when they're gonna do it. But it's going to eliminate some people, especially that are only putting down the lower percentages. If you have a buyer representation agreement, they know they have to pay that, the seller's not willing or able to because of this to do anything. The sellers might eventually be put in a situation where it's not moving at the price they want. There's gotta be some correction, but we just don't know when and how it's gonna happen.
Well, the IRS would maybe change that automatic deduction to have an option for your interest payment. So so your taxes would be going down, that might help offset some of it, it kind of be a governmental, man, I don't know. It's just.
Depends on who says not.
You know, the interesting thing is, they keep saying that, as Aaron mentioned, that, you know, the buyers, they're in a competitive market on a nice house, there's gonna be multiple offers. Well, 2 years ago, you know what we were all doing. Everybody had to somehow paint their offer red, because you got 15 offers in a day, and you wanted that red offer that stuck out. Well, how did we do it? We waived inspections, we bought as is, we did this, we did that. You had, and the seller is gonna look at, okay, what's gonna make me the most money? How many sellers are gonna accept an offer or even negotiate where the buyer's broker is asking for cooperation regarding commission? That offer is at the bottom of the pile.
Well, you go new build and they'll probably all get together and figure out a way.
Wait.
Because they offer so many concessions anyway.
But the interesting thing about new builds, and it's something some buyers agents are going to figure out, that may be where they want to work exclusively, right? Because there's no MLS involved. The buyers, the seller, the builder wants buyers agents to come to his communities, and he's going to pay 3%. So I think you're going to see buyers who are going to become very proficient. They're going to go to an EPCON, and they're going to have a booklet of this community, all the models available, all the upgrades. They're going to blow smoke up the salespeople, you know, take them out to lunch and get to know them, and find out everything they can about that community, the restrictions, what's like, and literally, they're going to focus on that type of property because they get 3%. They register their people with all those communities. And so you're going to see some buyers agent just focus on it, I think.
There's just not enough of those to go around.
No.
That's why some of the ones that are thinking right now are jumping into it before everybody else gets the idea.
Well, you're not battling highest and best.
Right.
This is,
Some prices there. Yeah, it's an interesting, yeah,
From a contract law standpoint, which obviously none of us.
I'll let Aaron answer the legal question.
Aren't they violating the sellers in the scenario of, hey, you can't do this? That's a contractual agreement between their agent and the property, for the property they're selling it. How are they saying that's violating their?
Free trade or something.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely, like I said earlier, there is a significant legal action that you can sue somebody for interference with a contractual right. So now you have the Department of Justice telling sellers and buyers what they're not allowed to do, and on the pretense that it's helping buyers. Pretense that it's helping buyers. That's why I think, you know, if I was a class action lawyer, I'd be lining up some buyers right now. Because the government is interfering with my ability to voluntarily enter into a contract with somebody who's willing to sell it to me based on the terms I'm willing to buy it for. That to me is a basic premise of our economy, our market, the way we do business. And there, you know, what are they gonna, like you mentioned, are they gonna get involved with car sales and say that car dealers have to disclose all the funds they get paid back from the manufacturer, the Ford, that I mean, it's a slippery slope, but and again, who knows?
Joe, you also,
In a year, this all disappears, maybe.
Joe, you also see the potential lawsuits over discrimination, right? Like first time home buyers
Yeah.
getting squeezed, single moms, Hispanics.
Absolutely.
You know, based on your statistic, you know how many first-time home buyers are people of color, minorities,
Right.
people
And like
that.
the other numbers you have to track, I mean, they have all that data, so when those things start to change. Are the same lawyers that handle this, I'm just gonna grab another group.
Who happen to be the tobacco lawyers, did you know that?
But it's also a disparate impact, like with fair housing, right? I mean, this new role is disparately impacting first time home buyers,
All the protected classes.
all the protected classes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Governor.
They're hitting them all.
I,
Yes.
I think, first time home buyers are already struggling because of the investors. They can't even get houses with all the investors coming in and buying them. You know, you have Blackstone, a lot of these big corporations funding a lot, they're in with the political realm. So it kind of seems like this is all playing into everyone renting that can't afford, you know?
Don't disagree there.
It's like, yeah.
The cost of
Well,
rental.
the government's going after them too, Denise. I mean, there's all sorts of conversation at the Ohio State House about limiting the number of non-owner occupied properties in the county. Yeah, I mean, where's the free market in all of this? And, I mean, it's crazy.
But it will favor those investors. They're not worried about the 3% buyers.
No,
They can have agents on staff and do all their contract work or attorneys. So, I mean, it does favor the big property investor.
For sure, the seller's certainly not representative of the investment companies that are buying up property and don't call real estate agent, don't want to call us. They don't want to tell us to tell them how much it's worth. And how they're losing $500,000 or $200,000 and by selling it as is. And
That was always to me one of the, because we would get calls, people that. Sell, you know, the FISBO. And the first thing I would tell them is, well, what price are you gonna sell it for? Well, what do you think? I said, I don't think. That's not my job. I don't know. I said, that's what a realtor does for you. Well, we have to pay a fees. Look at the statistics. The fee you pay a realtor is offset by the fact that you make more money using one. But, you know, it's a hard sell.
If compensation should be paid out as a result of the settlement, how far is the look back for that?
Oh, I think the main lawsuits were like. They were, like 10 years.
Was it that more?
I mean, not 10 years back to cover a period from. Maybe not.
I thought it was 2019 was what I heard, because that's when the original suit was filed.
Okay. Thank you.
That's just.
That's what I got.
Are there other legal issues around today besides this that we should be concerned about?
Happy to one.
I don't know if you call them happy, but.
Oh, my mom, the world is so screwed up right now that I wouldn't be surprised if yesterday God pulled the rapture.
Or the eclipse, you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, we had 3 FERPA transactions in the last 2 weeks. That's coming up more often. I'm getting a lot of questions about drop and swaps and membership interest agreements being in contracts. So those are,
Residential? Do you have to?
Yeah.
You have to
Really?
drop and swap on residential?
yeah, so you're commercial, you've seen them now, I'm in Upper Arlington and
They're dropping.
Yeah,
and
New
swapping
Albany
residential.
and
A lot of the
Do they
big-
have to disclose the
Dublin.
members?
not publicly. I mean, we see the operating agreements, but all you see online is a new LLC. You don't have to register the name of the members of the LLC.
Wow.
So you've got, you know, let's just, for example, $1 million house in Arlington, knocked down. $4 or $5 million house grows. They hire an attorney to transfer the property into an LLC, which is a $0 transfer for everyone to see.
Right.
And then the buyer buys the membership interest from the seller. So the only transaction anyone sees is the deed of the LLC. There's no value ever put there. But that's being attacked because those sometimes come with $1 million+ mortgage that's a record. So the school board, board of revision, they're saying, well, can't be 0 value if there's $1 million mortgage. But I've had a lot of sellers call because they're getting that language in from buyers. A lot of investment properties, not even $1 million. They just like the privacy of it. They want the county not to see the increase in the value. So it's more commercial, like you're used to, but.
With the cash buyers, they have the cash buyers with sellers get away with it a lot.
They get, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, there's nothing of record that would show that there was anything paid other than the $0.
We're doing a lot more trust closings for buyers. More dour interests. That people are trying to avoid. And I'm sure you're aware of that, but if you're representing a buyer who has the financial wherewithal to buy a property in just their name, but they're still married, I mean, we've had people that they haven't seen their husband or wife in 20 years. And they don't want to see it. But dower's still there. And so they want to buy a house, and the lender, if they're married, the lender is going to want to see a release of dower on the mortgage.
Is Ohio ever gonna get rid of them?
Yeah, we lost our chance.
Just a couple years ago, right?
Yeah,
Is it just 3 states that are left?
yeah, Kentucky, Arkansas, and Ohio. And heck, half those spouses are relatives, cousins. But,
Good looking.
yeah.
Joe on stage with you.
So you're trying to, so in order to avoid that problem and allow your client to buy, be familiar with the fact that some lenders, not all, but some lenders will approve the buyer buying in a trust. They'll still sign the note personally. They'll sign the note as trustee, but the deed is to a trust and the mortgage is from a trust and there's no dower involved. So that buyer, even though they're married, can buy a house without worrying about dower. So we seem to be doing a lot of those. We're getting requests for privacy trusts. A lot of people don't want, I had a CEO who didn't want his employees to be able to look up where he's living and how much he paid for it. So I now own his house, which is very important. But there are ways that you can close through a trust to ensure privacy so that the name of the owner is not a matter of public record.
Yeah, I just did one of those. It's nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little complicated because I, as the buyer trustee, sign all the papers, the loan papers, the mortgage, all the loan documents. And then before we leave the closing table, I resign as trustee. That was my only job. And the owner, Barone, who wants to keep his name off the records, is the successor trustee, but that's not a public document until he sells. So all people are going to see for as long as he owns the house is my name as trustee. They'll never know he owns the house.
If they recorded a memorandum of trust, would that not show that?
The original memorandum would show him as the trustee.
Not the successor. Oh, I got you. Okay.
Before I knew how this worked, I typed in my dad's name on the auditor's record and I was like, oh man. I got like 15 houses.
He was so nice to me for a week after that. Wanted to know if my will was any place. The funny part about that is I was in Columbus Monthly as one of the top 25. And I had 2 people from college. Now this is 30 years after college, so they've been calling me because now they thought I was somebody worth calling. I still live in the Ridge.
Is there any chance that the current settlements will get upset by this new action that what's been agreed to? Do we?
Not to our favor right now, because are you talking about the fact that the DOJ now has the right to?
Well, if I were Keller Williams or Remax or whoever, I would be apprehensive to follow through with that with the specter of, okay, I'm gonna pay all this money and sign a settlement. Basically, they're gonna, I know the 2 points have been negotiated, but basically they're gonna find another way to either make you pay a lot more money or
Those 2 points are the NAR suit. That
was the previous suit.
That was the one, right, that's not the one where Keller Williams agreed to pay 80 million. And they don't pay a dime until that settlement is authorized,
Right.
yeah.
Is it true that, the Oracle of Omaha, I can't remember his name right now, have they not settled? Buffett, have they not settled? I read somewhere that they had not settled.
That's correct.
Berkshire Hathaway.
Yeah, Berkshire.
Yeah.
Pat only knows Vice nickname.
But
Yeah,
Pat only knows Vice nickname.
yeah, I only know nicknames. It wasn't on the trust agreement.
You had mentioned, Joe, that each franchise, would have to come up with their own buyer agreement. Or us, like our region will, for us or whatever. But what about, there's a lot of small brokerages, I thought, I had heard that MLS wasn't even, their forms committee. Someone from there said that there was, the CBA was working on forms that I thought were boilerplate, is that true?
I haven't heard anything, and I'd be hesitant to think that the CBA is gonna work on brokerage documents that carry liability. Based on whether they comply with the sum, but maybe they are.
I mean, just as part of like our.
Well, they do with the listing agreements, the CBA approves all of them.
Right.
And yeah, I would say they would lean heavily on the associations for that. It's not the MLS forms committee, it's the association that's putting together the forms. The agreements.
Will they rewrite a new contract? Maybe pre-put it in there?
Probably.
They're working
They're
on
straight.
the contract right now.
On the
So
listing contract.
what? No,
Listing. How about listing too, though?
No, they're probably working, well, they have to,
Oh, big, yeah.
because they're gonna have to put in there, how much they're willing to offer to a buyer broker. And the, they've been working on a new board contract before this became a fact. So I'm sure they're now meeting and reevaluating what changes they want to put in the contract to incorporate these changes.
Joe, how does it work with, so Anywhere settled at the end of September, Remax 2 weeks later in October, Keller Williams on the 1st of February. I mean, did the judges just sort of collect them and wait to see who else is coming in and then just rule on all?
Well, I have a feeling that the judges are gonna be talking amongst themselves, but I don't know if you're gonna have a 1 day blessing for all the settlements.
Okay.
I don't know if all of them are identical. Everything I've read said they basically had the same terms in all of them. Because they knew that's what the Department of Justice wanted at a minimum. And but I would think that when they come out, all the brokers and their lawyers are gonna want to all come out at the same time, basically, so there's no advantage or disadvantage. It's, if you've been in the business for quite a while, we've all seen the end of the world many times. 2007, 2008, I was ready to sell Aaron. I had good money offered too.
All those houses.
And, we had, when the internet first came out, that was the end of our business. Because they would never need us for anything, they could all go on the internet. Zillow, all those things, that was the end of our business. There'll be changes to our business, it's not going to end. It'll end for the people that don't, that don't embrace changes. You have to embrace them. You can't be mad because we've been talking about all the ways that the decision's wrong. That's now irrelevant. Wrong, right, is irrelevant. You have to deal with the facts of the rules of engagement for your business. And the people that are going to succeed are going to be the people that adapt quickly and don't wait around hoping that it's going to change when the administration changes. When it does. If you wait, you're going to be way behind a lot of people. Like Aaron said, you got that. The 1% commercials just started on the radio. I got the 2% postcard over a month ago. So you really cannot wait to reinvent yourself. You got to figure out how you want to do business and get ready for it now.
Like to help you sell days,
What?
like to help you
If I
sell
were to
days.
say, we've had discount brokerages for as long as I've been in the business.
The difference.
They're not around for reasons.
Well, but Aaron and I talked about this. The reason the discount broker has failed is for the very reason you're prohibited from doing this anymore. All the brokerages, as part of the settlement, have agreed that they will not use any software that lines up houses based on fees, co-op fees. Well, now the co-op fees aren't on MLS. But the discount brokerages all failed because all of us went to the website and saw how much commission was being offered there. And if it was a 1% discount brokerage, they didn't show their houses. That's why they went out of business. Nobody would show their houses. Well, that's different now because you're not gonna know that going in. So I think these have a better chance of survival now because this is what the Department of Justice is pushing, negotiable fees, lower fees. But the reason the discount brokerages failed in the past, I don't think is going to help us at all now.
I think it's more than 1%, it's all said and done.
It is,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
is, it's just the listing side at 1%.
Yeah.
The seller's paying 4. If they want to offer it. Well, that's what they.
Well, that, in point to you, the company who's doing the 1%, I think that's his fourth or fifth company.
Yeah.
Yes.
He just, all the, just 3 grams of something else.
Thanks.
Yeah,
It simply costs more than 1% to run.
45 minutes late for a close.
Period.
And he had no answers with the sellers, because they were at the sellers asking, like, this is still the he had no
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, when you see it, you see it, you think there's any MLS will go away.
Yeah, there's a lot of it predicted. So that home.com is gonna see limited.
I have an opinion on that, it's probably a little off the beat path a little bit, but I've always been angry about the agreement that NAR did in the nineties when they solidified their deal with Realtor.com and gave away our web URL, not understanding what that was gonna look like in the future. Why aren't we able to charge for our listings? Their businesses, whether it's Zillow, Realtor.com, Homes.com, you name it, they are building their empires on our work. We should be charging them. They should not be charging us. Period. Without our contribution of our hard work and our listings, they would not have a business, period. So why has that not ever been in a discussion? I never hear anybody talk about that.
I think it's too big of a ordeal to get that many people to agree to do that, because there's always gonna be people who say, I'm not gonna charge you. I wanna be on there. And if you wanna hold out, because that's what you'll have to do, if you convince them to pay you, then nobody's gonna see your house on home.com. So that's the problem is, you know.
I'm talking about as an industry. Why are we funding the people who are perpetuating our demise?
Well, I think if you read the articles, there's a lot of people complaining about the leadership at NAR and how they let this all happen.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of stuff there.
That's been that way for as long as I've
Doesn't
been.
seem like there's a chance in hell.
Pat, we had that
Yeah.
until we
So,
so
No, I see. But there's no reason why we couldn't.
You're never gonna get everybody to do.
All you need to do is get enough people.
Yeah.
Copyright your listing and you can advertise it anywhere you want, but you're gonna pay me. And here's the deal, you're gonna pay the seller. Right?
Right.
It's not for benefiting us, you're gonna pay the seller. Is there a seller that's gonna be angry about that?
No, he'll pass on the savings to the buyer, I'm sure. By
Right. In the form of a discounted price,
Yeah.
regardless of market.
Any questions about, like I said, when we started, I know we didn't give you any answers because we just don't know the answers. We're waiting like you are. I signed up for Inman. And every day there's something new and they want you all to go to Las Vegas because they're gonna solve all your problems at their convention.
You can't get past that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hit that actually.
Right.
Aaron sent us a settlement fact sheet earlier too, and we'll email it out to everybody. Just know that that's gonna be coming your way.
it's just off on our site. It seemed like a more concise than the 19-page, 20-page ones I was.
And the document Joe was talking about from 2 documents from NAR about I forget the numbers too, the number of things that you do to provide value as an agent. I've sent those out previously. So go back and look through your emails from me, or if you can't find them, let me know and I'll resend them.
Well, Gary Keller's book has a nice chart that compares functional versus conditioners. We also list your benefits to a seller to list the same for a buyer. I forget what page it's on. Yeah.
MREA.
So I've got them, yes, 179 ways.
Yeah.
Agents are worth every penny. And then the next one is 105 more ways.
Is that what you're emailing them? Yeah, is that what-
I already have an email to you guys
Oh.
about a month ago,
Good.
but this is something that they gave us today.
Well, you guys. Said I got like seen it.
Does anybody want the links to what Joe mentioned at the beginning, the NAR thing is talking about the 179 ways agents
Yeah.
or realtor,
Yeah,
and
send them
whatever? All right, I'll forward them to my mom, or unless you want.
Should be.
You can send me the links, that's fine. I just have the documents printed, that's maybe even easier.
Okay. 'Cause, like, I saw the thing they sent, I think one of them was one of the things you mentioned emailing, but I'm sending. them. And also, we have a CE coming up. If you would like to sign up, it's Thursday, April 18th. That's how our names and faces have been on the screen this whole time. I don't know that you two noticed that. But for law, Thursday, April 18th, it's from 1 to 4. It's in Dublin at the KW over there, but everyone's welcome. And if you'd like to RSVP, I can tell you what to Google to find it, or text me and I'll send you the link. We have a 1 hour contract provisions and current issues class as well. So if you liked what you saw here today, if you like these guys over here, then they'll be teaching both. Can I send it to you to send?
Sure.
All right, sweet. I'll send it.
Those are usually a little more upbeat. People still leave like. We always have to talk about the, bad things that are happening or issues we've seen, but this is a hard topic, so.
Right, and, you read all the stats that they're saying. A year from now, it's the old, look to your left, look to your right, one of those people will be in this business. And they call that the silver lining in this one article, because that means there's more business available for you. Well, there's gonna be more business working harder for less money. But there's still going to be a lot of you are going to be very successful, because contrary to what they want people to think, buyers, they want somebody to represent them. It's just that we're making it unaffordable. They want you to represent them. So we'll see how sellers are going to be, how aggressive they're going to be on refusing to go on.
I've listed several houses in the last 4 or 5 houses, and I've had the conversation, and none of them push back at all.
Well,
It's great, they tell me the same thing.
I explained to them the pros and the cons, like, yeah, it's great if you only have to pay X amount, but if there's no incentive and you're not driving competition, you lose all the value of, that's how you make money. It's not, it's what you get.
You don't drive buyer's agents to this property by offering compensation. The more people that are competing, the higher price you get, you cover that generally. But, you read Barbara Corcoran, who I guess is some kind of savant, or I've never seen Shark Tank and nothing about it. I know what happened to Corcoran in our neighborhood.
Right.
But she came out and said, this is what to do about nothing. She said it will have absolutely no change on the way we do business. There's a lot of people that think that.
In the end, we're gonna be doing the same
Once
thing.
everything settles,
I feel like we're our worst enemy in three of this.
Yes.
It's not the buyer or the sellers that are gonna be our problem. It's gonna be us against each other. And we all just need to have respect of what we do and how hard we work, and have those conversations every single time.
and here, you opened up one of my little pet talks, and we'd be glad to do a Steve class on this. The competition is gonna be stiffer. And it's going to be in presentation. Not downgrading another realtor, not talking. You telling them why you are the professional and what you're going to do. I understand for a fact, this is what will happen at a closing. Here's your checklist. Given you, all of that has to be done. One little thing I do a class on is, if you want them to treat you as a professional comparing to other people, you better treat yourself as a professional. That means you don't show up in meetings in biker pants and a helmet. And then you think you're going on a tour, you're going fishing afterwards. We hear all the comments after you walk out of a closing room, it's not pretty. And I remember the day, Taylor remembers the day. Rob, he would remember the day. But I never saw a realtor at a closing table without a tie. Never. Never.
Always worse.
I remember that.
Yeah, and the other realtor, the female suits dressed up nice. Now, literally, I've had a realtor show up in a bathing suit.
Oh, my God.
I was going to late period voting and they didn't have time to change. Bathing suit, tank top. Aaron, you've seen them.
and you started off by saying this, but we're still in the closing room almost every day. And I always ask the question, is your agent coming? So I don't want, some agents don't want you to start, so it's just. And half of them do, they don't know, and it blows my mind that they haven't had that conversation. Now, the other half are like, yeah, they texted me, we're early, they're gonna be here in a few minutes. There's just such a difference between what we see.
Yeah.
And the value that some of you provide, and, it's just, I think. When COVID happened, and I think, still lenders in the room. We stopped seeing lenders for obvious reasons, and then we didn't see them anymore. Now we see more lenders, and I'll tell you that is. Customers love it. And I'll even make a point to say most lenders don't come just to give them that recognition. Because they always have questions about, I can go over a loan document in my sleep. But the reassurance of having their lender, and my point is their realtor there means a lot to them. So, the recent closings I did, lender was there, realtor was there. They were first time home buyers, but they were comfortable because everybody that they've been working with was in that room.
You can take a lot of the anxiety out of the
Right.
transaction or closing by going over the sell statement with the buyer or the seller
Yeah.
in a much less intense atmosphere prior to the settlement.
We rarely have to go over closing statements now because most agents go over it in advance. But again, Aaron said they're more comfortable with their people there. We're not their people. They don't know us. They're coming in, we're doing the closing. They don't even know really what our job is there. They know what your job is. And I'll give you a really bad example. This morning, a back-to-back funds were being wired from another title company from the closing last night, late closing, and then an early purchase. The money wired to our account for that buyer was $3,000 less than what the buyer thought they were going to have. Jeff was closing it. He looked at the closing statement from the other title company that closed it. That title company, after it was signed by the buyer, changed the bottom line, didn't tell the buyer that they had made a mistake on the real estate taxes, and just sent that check to us for the buyer's closing, never telling him that we just reduced your bottom line by $3,000. So number one, bad title company. Number two, the people looked at their agent at the table at 8 o'clock this morning and said, why didn't you catch this and let us know? Agent had never looked, didn't review it with them, and said something like, well, I just got it late last night. Well, no, but the point is, you're the person they trust. And for the agent not to have reviewed it, and you know what, they may not have caught the problem, but they were on both ends of the deal. So they had the closing statements, they would have seen the difference at least. So now that's an extreme example, but the point is, you guys are gonna have to recreate yourself as that professional. I'm not saying, and again, we're not talking down anybody. You don't have to wear suits and ties. I wear a tie because I think it makes me look taller. But no, I'm not saying, I'm saying, because some people, you all have your own style. But your style better not be a bathing suit or a biker shorts at a closing.
I don't wear one side shorter.
I've had many times. So. They just, so. Somewhere in my past, I remember buyers had decided on what they should give us how to get that, does that exist or just imagine?
No, there was, and then if you look in your contract now, there's a term in the standard board contract that says we as a title company have permission to send the closing documents to your agents. But you're right, before that, we had to get consent.
And I've done many, every year. I never see it. You know, I have, how many people for it, so I.
Yeah, if we don't send it,
Get it, where you don't have time to really.
yeah, if we don't send it to you, call Aaron.
Well, I mean, on the buy side, it still is a somewhat of a last minute business. You know, numbers change.
Yeah, because the lender doesn't get you the information, you are balanced.
That's just how it works. We're balancing numbers to the day before, which is difficult because buyers are calling and saying, what do we wire?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you should at least have some time to go over that. with them. Sometimes it's
Not
not
the
the
time,
case.
it's well.
Sellers,
There's
once you know the closing on the closing date, you should have that. But you have to pay off an HOA. You know, what we found is that every agent works different. So, you know, we're working with a new customer. We always ask, do you want it to come to you? Do you want it to go to your client? You want to be copied? Because some agents want it first. For obvious reasons, to look, make sure commissions are right. If you have any additional commissions or brokerage fees. But everyone works different. We usually don't just send it to the customer without you ever getting.
But it's the little things. Closing is showtime. You know, and if you as the buyer's agent, when the buyer's all excited that they just bought a house and they want to know where their keys are, and you as the buyer agent haven't talked to the listing agent, made arrangements, and have to say, well, I don't know. You know, all those little things, you could have worked and shown them 15 houses, negotiated a heck of a deal on this house, done yeoman's work on getting it to the closing table, and all they're gonna remember is what you did at the closing table. And that's showtime. You know, I've read all of the advertising gurus' books about the referral tree and how your referral trees grow as a young realtor. Well, this is where it's gonna either wither or grow, is that last FaceTime performance at the closing table. Trust me, it's as important as everything you've done before that.
Thank you guys so much for coming in and sharing today. Appreciate it.
If you'd like our contact information for further questions, it's on the screen. So. And hope to see you at CE classes.
Thank you so much. That was,
Thanks for
that was
joining.
great.
I can't tell who, Reba, I think. Thanks very much.
Somebody on the.
But I'm not sure to see.
Yeah.
So I don't understand what's like the color.
Yeah.
Where? Nice. You guys will have. Yeah, I emailed, checked in. I feel like.
Right.
I need to go off of that. How we're talking about the research myself. Thank you. Thank you.
Check if you don't have, I'll send it again. Yeah.
I'm not either, but let me know if you need something. Email. I think you can put a line for you. That's not going on. Right. Now, let's see.
Oh, they have. That's right.
I did, I got it.
Yeah.
I got this one down. By the way, yeah, it's where, where, told me where, I said, what's your house number?
It doesn't look like.
It's officially like you know, in your.
Been raised. She's been.
They're very gracious, like community conference member.
All right.
Yeah.
I literally. I'm here.
All of these.
Okay, that's fair. Then I'll just let you.
Okay.
She's not looking to them.
You want me to send you? In person. Correct. Yeah, they're all in person. They don't. They've done.
I'm the guy you.
There's no one here. But so I recommend.
Yeah, I mean, anything. It's always saying that, but they need it.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. Good seeing you.
You too. It's been. I didn't know.
Yeah, but let me know. I'll keep the post. I'll talk to
Vivid change.
It's always my. I had somebody out here, just a war experience. Because I wouldn't want that. And there was some. And I just asked my mom. Because when I.
Who would ask me such
that?
So yeah, this is the girl that ran over. That'd be Leary now.
One day I came home from fall, that where I was son, he had taken over, and I had all these pumpkins and.
I love that.
Uniforms been around, and stuff sitting in my driveway, I mean, they still appreciate everything I did.
I mean, there's. Roberts, out here, yeah.
Literally no contest, so just.
You go get this car delivered contract. Okay, I was at the. Well, no, back to.
After September.
Good reference.
She wants to work.
Yes.
I
Do this for us. She got there. Let's do it.
So
She sees it. She's trying a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
You've been doing this out this way.
So
I think it's license, because the system is interesting, yeah.
And,
So
the real.
it's not like student. does, I was like, you should. She sees.
Bye. So I better see for let's use Monday. Was there any other thing? Okay, say hi to your parents for me.
I mean,
And then the other one,
so later, my. I could make.
So do you
So
know?
you were great, so we're saying.
No. I feel like they know since I think they know people your family.
Yeah, I don't understand, she started this, right?
August.
That's it. Just like yourself. Need to understand that,
Should I add this?
don't take your risks.
Well, she's got where I guess it is.
No, she, I mean, it's pretty.
All that.